The Flash is out in cinemas now, and wow, what a good film that is. It is amazing. I heard all the hype of it being one of the greatest superhero films of all time, and it still managed to surpass my expectations. I was expecting it to be on the level of like a Spider-Man No Way Home. A lot of fun, but by no means a perfect, but it ended up being on the level of like a Spider-Man 2 instead.
Oh boy, yeah.
It truly is one of the greatest superhero films of all time, which is what people were saying up until very recently when the movie started to get a bit hated on, and I really can't understand why. I do believe it's one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. In fact, I think it is the best superhero film ever made. So what do I mean by the best superhero film ever made? Is The Flash better than The Dark Knight? Obviously not. I don't think there'll ever be a film that is better than The Dark Knight. I don't think The Flash is the best film about a superhero, but out of all the comic book movies that have ever come out, I think The Flash is the best at being a superhero film. Like, it may not be the most well written or the most well shot or the most well acted superhero film ever made, but in terms of being that classic superhero adventure, I don't think any other film comes close to this one, and this is for many different reasons. Number one, the world. DC by nature always has the better feeling world because of all of its fictional cities like Gotham and Central City and Metropolis and all of that. Marvel having New York as the main city always makes it feel a little bit more like the real world with superheroes. So DC by its nature would lend itself to feeling more like a true superhero story, given that it's set in a more different world than our own. It manages to be one of the most well-connected DCEU movies and simultaneously a film that you can watch standalone and understand it perfectly. When I first saw this movie at the press screening I went with people that had barely seen any other DC or Marvel movies, and they followed it without any problem. I guess it's also to do with the fact that a lot of the Marvel movies have the classic plot hole of why aren't the other heroes helping, whereas a lot of the DCEU movies don't have that problem. In this movie, the Flash is actively working with other members of the Justice League at the start, and when he's not with them, he's actively trying to find them. Because of course he would. If a world-ending threat came to Earth, why wouldn't the Justice League be the ones to stop it? Peacemaker did the same thing. Like, why would the Justice League not show up for this? There's no reason. So that's why they did. Having the Flash interact with members of the Justice League not only makes sense, but it's just really fun to see as well. We've had so many superhero team-ups over the years. This has got to be one of the most fun ones out of all of them. Like, the 3 Spider-Man and the Endgame fight are obviously cool, but this is quite cool as well. We haven't seen the Justice League really team up outside of their movie, and we definitely haven't seen them in a scene like this where they're stopping a small-scale crime. I don't think we've ever seen that. I don't think there's ever been a scene where the Avengers just stop like an everyday crime. Like, I think it's always cool when we see like Spider-Man stop a bank robbery or something, because it just reminds you that the superheroes are doing this every day, not just when it's the life-threatening things happening. And having the team of superheroes do it is even better, because it just shows that, you know, even though we haven't seen the Justice League in ages, you know, not counting Peacemaker, it shows that they're still active, you know, and it's just cool to know that, you know, the Justice League have carried on. Number 2, it's not an origin story. Everyone loves a good superhero origin, but it does limit itself to a certain kind of story. Once you take that out of the equation, you get to have more fun with the story and there's more you can do. But having it also be the first Flash film means it's not a sequel either. The Flash is just in his prime. In fact, all the characters are in their prime, and that's what makes this story great. In the comics, most of the time you're dealing with characters in their prime, unless the story is about the origin or it's specifically about a later point in their life. And quite frankly, that's the versions of characters you want to see. Just the characters, you know? We've got Batman, The Flash, Supergirl, and, you know, there's some other characters in here as well that I'm not going to spoil, but I think that's, you know, not to make this a DC versus Marvel thing, but DC just has better characters, so it's gonna be a better superhero story because it's got better superheroes. Number 3, how the film treats previous DC movies. How this movie tackles the Snyderverse is just great. This movie is the most connected to the rest of the DCEU since those original Snyderverse movies. Being a Snyderverse fan, it was so great to see all of those movies being very integral to this movie. Given that those movies were not, particularly loved by the fandom, and the studio has moved away from that vision, those movies very well easily could have been ignored like they have been for the past however many years, or kind of brushed aside as a joke. This movie respects all the films that have come before it, and just given the fact that Ben Affleck quit and now is back, it's just cool to see, just like it was Henry Cavill being in Black Adam. This is just the proof needed that the DCEU could have easily gone in a different direction without having to completely abandon everything that Snyder established. This movie completely respects everything Snyder's done, and it acts as a perfect send-off to that universe as we move into James Gunn's new DCU instead. This movie expertly integrates the previous films in the DCEU into its story, as well as obviously Michael Keaton's films. Now this movie obviously also has its fair share of nostalgia as well, with Michael Keaton's Batman being a big part of the marketing.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
There are some other surprises in the film too. Now, I've heard people saying that this movie is reliant on the nostalgia, and if you didn't grow up on those Michael Keaton movies, a lot of the movie is lost on you. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I didn't grow up on Michael Keaton's movies, and that didn't take away from this movie at all. I think because Keaton is just playing Batman, as we all know him, any of the nostalgia to his previous films is kind of just like an Easter egg. Pretty much all of the nostalgia has been shown in the trailers. This movie never becomes just pure fan service. It's always got the story first. I'm keeping this non-spoilers, but there's a scene that people are probably gonna say is just fan service. But I feel like the way they did it was way better and made it seem way more relevant to the story, when it easily could have just been, Easter eggs for fan service purposes. Number 4, the humor and the emotion. The average superhero movie nowadays always has humor as a pretty big part of it. A lot of the times, the humor and the serious moments are quite hard to balance, and a lot of the jokes end up ruining serious moments. This has been a trend for so many years now. This movie easily could have followed that. However, it somehow manages to balance the humor and the serious moments so well. This is probably the funniest movie in the DCEU outside of the ones that are straight up comedies like The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, but it also has incredibly serious and emotional moments, and none of the jokes undercut those moments in this film. So yeah, it manages to be one of the funniest DC movies and also one of the most emotional. Ezra Miller truly delivers a great performance here as both the comedic role of the younger Barry and the dramatic, more emotional role of the older Barry. And you often forget that they are the same actor. Obviously, there is the whole controversy with Ezra Miller, and a lot of people are using that as a critique of the movie, which I think is incredibly unfair. We all know Ezra Miller isn't a great person.
My name is Ezra Miller, and I am criminally excited to be a part of the Justice League.
But that's really got nothing to do with how good of a film it is. It's completely separate. If you don't want to support the film, that's fine, but in terms of the quality of the film, it doesn't factor into it whatsoever. Now, I just want to touch on some of the complaints people have been making, primarily the CGI. The CGI is not great, but it hasn't been great in most superhero movies in recent years. The Speed Force does look like a PS3 cutscene, but what I think a lot of people are failing to realize is that's what it's supposed to look like. Andy Muschietti said that he wanted the Speed Force to look like a wax museum style, and if you've seen the movie, that's exactly what it looks like at times. The CGI there, if you're expecting it to be realistic, looks horrendous. But it's clearly intentional because the rest of the movie doesn't look like that. It's only those scenes in the Speed Force. There are a couple scenes where the CGI is bad. Like there's a scene that involves a baby, right? And it is clearly very, very obviously a CGI baby. There's no way that was real. Literally the rest of the film, I didn't notice poor CGI whatsoever. In a lot of reviews, people have been saying, oh, you can clearly see the difference between which Barry is the one who was really there and which one was not. I didn't notice that once. In fact, I was actually trying to identify which one was not actually in frame, and I couldn't. The effect of the two Barrys is just flawless in the film, in my opinion. I literally could notice it at any point. So if you have seen The Flash, what did you guys think of it? Let me know in the comments below. Is this one of the best superhero films, or am I overhyping it a little bit? If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. I'm going to be making all my videos about film on this channel from now on. And if you haven't seen The Flash, why not check out this video I made? It's essentially a recap of Ezra Miller's Flash up until the events of this movie. That being said, that's all from me. I'll see you in the next one.